Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And tonight I'm joined by Aliyah and Wendy, and we are going to be talking about values and how you can align your values to unleash your potential. But before we get started on this topic, I'm going to hand over to Aliyah and Wendy to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their business. Over to you guys.
So, hello everyone. Donna, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here and discuss this topic with you. I'm Aliyah Mohyeddin. I'm currently sitting in Karachi, Pakistan. I am an NLP master trainer and a leadership coach. I started my business 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, 12 years ago, actually, goodness, in Australia. And my business spans the Central Asia as well as Australia. And I work with leaders in helping them to become more efficient at what they do, and better at what they do, and it is all about values. So that's what I do.
Thank you for that, and I'm so pleased and so grateful that you could make it today. I really, really do. And we had a lovely chat just before, so it's great that this is a hot topic for you, and you do this with your clients. So thank you, Wendy.
All right, for me, I'm Wendy Shaw. I head up the M-Brain Me community. I'm based in Dubai. I'm an M-Braining trainer and coach, and I'm also an NLPer, so very aligned with Aliyah as well. I don't know what else to say.
It's been one of those days. It's been a long day.
Yes. Yeah, but always happy to be here. I have about an hour's left of conversation, and then I'm done for today.
You will be able to put your feet up and have a cup of tea. Not long to go. No, thank you, Wendy. I know Wendy. I met her through Coaches Supporting Coaches, which is a group that I run here in Dubai. It's funny because we were talking about values, and one of my top values is ethics and community, and so with Coaches Supporting Coaches, I think that becomes very apparent. But I am also a joy and purpose coach, and I sort of like a parenting coach, and where I guide, and I'm the cheerleader and confidant for parents to get that balance, to bring back that self-worth, and to connect with their families, with their partners, and with themselves again. It's not an either-or situation. So, I'm extremely fortunate, and I love what I do. Okay, so let's get started. Values. Okay, so this is such a big topic, and it's such a powerful and important topic for us to get to know what our values are. But what I would love to start off with is your definitions of what you think values represent.
Wendy, do you want to go first? Or?
Okay. For me, values define what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. And, our values are what's truly important to us. So can be in different areas. They provide us motivation. So, they light us up and give us that energy. But they also give us that kind of evaluation as well. So after the fact, did I do a good job? Was I doing at my best? How did that go? We measure things against our values. So I'd say that's the shortest definition of values that I can give. Aliyah, add to it, expand it.
I totally agree with what Wendy just said. And values are what define what's important to us. They are what we call our motivation filters. They are where we know that we are aligned with our values or disaligned with our values, depending on how we feel emotionally. Are we motivated? Are we demotivated? Are we in flow? Are we not in flow? So values, they help us define where we put our attention. And values are very closely associated with our beliefs. And beliefs will support values, and beliefs are how we make sense of the world. So what we perceive to be true and how we make sense of the world is how we create our beliefs, which are then influenced by values. All of this is a very unconscious process that we all go through in terms of giving meaning to our lives, in terms of giving direction to our lives. So it's a very, very key part of who we are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this topic, and I kind of just discussed this with you two beforehand, was a little while ago, I was having a conversation and it came up about somebody having different values for their personal life and for their professional workplace. And that got me thinking, did I have that? Do I have that? Is that common? So, and I've just reread the Brené Brown Dare to Lead book, and she was saying, no, there's values that should cover both. So I would love to hear, your thoughts on, are they separate or not?
Yeah, I mean, values are often contextual. And we were talking about this earlier as well. So values are in the context of, so values in the context of work, values in the context, as Wendy was saying earlier, values are generally contextual. And then we have what we call core values or umbrella values that are the overarching values that will influence everything else. And those core values will then kind of be more generalized, if you like. So we do also have potentially values that are in conflict with each other as well. And that can be, say, for example, we can have a value that's in relationships or in parenting that is in conflict with certain values we have in business or in work. And that's when we may have sabotage coming in, or we may have demotivation coming in, or any of that sort of stuff. So there can be values conflicts. But at the end, the core values are what I think what Brené Brown was meaning. They're the sort of umbrella ones that kind of override the overall system, I think. What are your thoughts, Wendy?
Yes, I think we've got sort of the core ones. I've worked with clients, very much, what are your values around this area of your life? So you can identify values in each and every area of your life. You will have some overlaps. You will have some that show up again and again and again. So those would be more of your core ones. And it's really sort of, how are you meeting your core values? So it's one thing to identify them, and you can do that by asking, in this context, in this area of your life, so in the context of leadership or work or relationship, what's most important to you? And usually I push people to brainstorm. They dry up. You get the conscious ones come out, and you say, give me 3 more, give me 2 more, I got space of it, give me 1 more, and literally just fill up a page with everything that's important. And then push to identify their number 1. So then we can put them into a hierarchy for coaching. I don't know about you, Aliyah. I usually go for top 5 or 6. 10
me too.
Takes a long time. Do you really need 10? But top 5, top 6. Get those in the right order. And then you've got a measurement tool. You've got something that I've identified, this is what's truly important to me. Now, if I'm going for a job, how are they, I've now got my checklist. How does this company align with my values? Yeah. How does this role align with my values? So in a relationship, you can actually explore, okay, if this is turning into a relationship, where am I ticking off my values? Where's there a misalignment? Let's talk about this. I think it's key in relationships, because we don't talk about what's really important to you in the context of this relationship until things start going wrong. And then it's a bit late. So, I do use them in coaching very specifically for whichever area we're actually working in. They will have the bigger ones as well. I'm just thinking about the Wheel of Life. you know, that's all of the things in your life that are important. So those could be your core values. Could be.
Yeah. And it reminds me of a client I once had a long time ago in Australia, and every day he would stand in front of the mirror when he was getting ready for work. He'd stand in front of the mirror, and he'd just at the sink in the bathroom, and he'd look himself in the mirror, and he would say, "Just one more day. Just get through this day. Just get through this day." Mm-hmm. And every day, that's how he went through his work life. And that is a great example of somebody who there's a massive clash in values, or there's various clashes happening, which is going to cause somebody to totally burn out. And as coaches, and I'm sure Wendy will support this as you, Donna, is we're looking for those values alignments and those values clashes. So, I mean, in terms of what Wendy was talking about, you want to know that if you're in a relationship, for example, you want to know that in the core values, there isn't a clash with your partner. They can be in some of the other values, it can, there can be differences, and that can be exciting. But in the core values, there needs to be an alignment. The same thing happens at work. You want to make sure that your core values are aligned with the cultural values of the organization. And if they're not, then you're going to have problems. It's going to be a struggle. So yeah, it's important to kind of look at your own value, become aware of your values. And most of us have no idea. They're totally unconscious, and thus we have no idea about them. And so when we're in pain, and when we're demotivated, and when we're sabotaging, and we'll put labels of I'm lazy or whatever, right? And it's a values clash taking place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I had this, I was going through a divorce, and I was having problems at work. So 2 biggies. And so I was quite hard on myself and took a lot of blame. It's my fault. Maybe I'm too irrational. Maybe I am difficult. Maybe I am all these things. Not realizing that my values were completely misaligned with what was going on in the school and with what was going on with the relationship. Honesty and integrity was a big one. So when he cheated and lied, that was huge. That was really huge. And again, ethical and integrity as a teacher and community was really, really big. And that was in question. So my whole life felt really out of balance, and I didn't know until I started to look into it. And I found out that those are my core values that I honor now. I lean into it, I embrace it, and fully respect it. So, yeah. So what else has come up for you, Wendy, with regards to this? And have you noticed anything in your life where this has become quite apparent?
You mentioned divorce, a significant emotional event. You can have a shift in values. I know, having been divorced, that didn't work. When I first discovered NLP and I started exploring my relationship values, it was honesty, trustworthiness, reliable, a lot of safety. It was all about protecting me. And my coach at that time actually highlighted, she said, Wendy, there's no love, there's no excitement, there's no, sparkles is one of my words now. And it was like, wow, I'd never considered that. Because I'd been hurt, my values shifted. Now what was important for me was to not allow myself to get hurt again. So if people didn't demonstrate that they were reliable and they were trustworthy and they were, honest and sincere, and how boring. Where's the adventure, the excitement, the fun? So that was a big one for me. Another big one, health didn't really show up. Because I was healthy, I just took it for granted until I damaged my spine. And then once that happened, it's that I was saying, you don't miss what you've never had.
Yeah.
I really missed my health because I just accepted I'd had it before. So that became more important to me, and now that's become a much stronger, it's much more important. If I'm healthy, I can do everything else. If I'm not healthy, I link it back to 2 years horizontal. I lost my home, I lost my job, I lost pretty much everything. But looking back on it now, that was the shift I needed to completely change my career. So it's not a bad thing. So when significant emotion events, when a friend of mine has recently had a baby. So when you have a baby, that's significant. And now all of your values start shifting and changing because you're now a parent. It's a new role. So especially for guys as well, they go from the fun loving out with their friends, having a good time. It's like, oh, I'm responsible. So there's a big shift in values then.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm curious what you've just said. What was it that you just said?
So many amazing things.
It was that good. Oh yeah. So about when you said your coach said there's no love, adventure, excitement, and all the rest of it. This is what we were discussing before. So, like you, Wendy, I have ethics, community, and safety as my really top 3 core. And that's why I'm kind of like laughing to myself when I heard you, because when I looked at them, I thought, that's boring. That doesn't suit my personality. And then I thought, well, hold on a second. With the ethics comes the trust, comes the integrity, comes the honesty. With the safety comes, again, the honesty and that sense of community, that connection. Same with community, is that serving others, putting others first, So all of those together gives me freedom. I'm safe to be myself. I'm safe to be vulnerable. I'm safe to be a little bit quirky. Without that safety, without those ethics, and without that sense of community and connection, I wouldn't have that.
Yeah. I'd say 2 things here. Number 1, different words have different meanings to different people. So my definition of safety might be very different to yours. And my what safety means to me might include many other important things. And I could collect them all together and just have one word for it. The other thing, Donna, you mentioned freedom. Freedom from or freedom to?
Oh,
Good question.
A bit of both.
Yeah. So I think that's a very important thing about values. Once you identify your values, is it towards or away from that motivates you? So if I hate to use the word money, but some people might have money as a value. It should never be an end value, or it should be a means value. What does that money do for you or allow you to do? But some people, they want that, they want money to move away from being poor. So it's an away from value. If I'm going for money to prevent me from ever going back to being poor or experiencing that again. So they're motivated to take action to move away from being poor.
Yeah.
So when they no longer feel poor, it becomes less important and they can slide backwards. So having a towards as well, what's that really going to create for me, or what am I going to get, achieve? What else can I do? That gives you a forward motivation. So I think one of the classic ones is weight loss. We talk about losing weight. We're focusing on losing something. Why not focus on being healthy?
Yeah.
Because we start to lose weight and we start to feel good, and then we've taken massive actions, we're feeling good now, and we ease off because we haven't got a future paced towards motivator. So the towards and away from is a key one, because that will impact how motivated we are when we're motivated and when we lose it.
Yeah.
So it's really good to explore both ends. Yeah.
Well said. I think also in terms of what Wendy, what you were talking about, and also with Donna, as you were saying, your values of ethics and safety, and forgotten what the third one was.
Community connection.
Community, yeah. And again, so values are what we call normalizations. So they're generalizations, and these words are words that have different meanings for different people, as Wendy was saying. So safety or ethics and all will have very, very different meanings. And getting clarity on those is important. Now, also, as we go through life and we have life experiences and, getting a divorce or having a baby or leaving your job or any of these are big life events that take place, and our values do change. Or we can change our relationship to those values. So at the time that, maybe I'm using your example, at the time when you were maybe getting a divorce, the value for safety was whatever it was in terms of a definition and a meaning in your relationship to it. And while that value may stay there, it has evolved and changed into something very, very different, even with the values there. So for example, with me, before I got into NLP, and it was my sort of dark night of day moment that sort of pulled me into NLP and, shone the light back into my life. And I was at that time also very, very lost, and married and still married, but married and unhappy and not living a meaningful life. It was just a very dark period. And I had a high level of need for safety, and there was a degree of being in the relationship for the sake of the safety that it brought. And today, the relationship has evolved, transformed, and completely changed into the standard and quality that it offers both of us. And also my definition and relationship to safety has transformed. We all want safety in some form. That is like a core human need. And the moment that's removed from us, that's what we put everything else aside and we're going to chase for safety. That's a core human need. But how we relate to it, what it means for us on a daily basis changes. So now what I do is something that, in terms of my work, in terms of the business I've created, in terms of the name I've created for myself, is something that enhances my quality, my safety level and value, just fulfills that jug completely, where I can now focus on other things as well. And so while we may have values that say, for example, ethics and safety and community, those, how you relate to it is also going to change as you move through life and move through the different experiences that you have. And we have something we call values levels as well. That is also how you're functioning. And, it's a magical, mystical, and a beautiful experience, and space to sort of go into and explore.
You've just brought something really up for me, and that is how my interpretation of safety has changed. Because when, after 16 years of marriage, and just one day my ex-husband says, "That's it, our marriage is over, I'm leaving you," walks out, and I've got 3 kids here in Dubai. It was just like everything that I knew was thrown up into the air. So that longing for safety or security was so strong. A couple of years after my ex-husband, I met somebody else, and he is the first man in my whole life that ever made me feel safe. But he turned out to be the biggest narcissist. So whilst I was longing for that safety, I did get it, where I felt it from him, but it isn't the safety that I now have a new definition and new boundaries around of what safety is. So yeah, that's why you've just brought that up for me. It's just like, wow, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, talking about safety, and I know we're sort of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but just talking about safety, I had a client recently, and they were always in this sort of catastrophizing state, and very much about always their nervous system always seemed to be triggered. And this person said, it's interesting how we were talking about values and talking about safety and context, because for me, my safety is external. I'm not sure when it happened, but safety seems to be outside of me versus inside. And when safety is outside of us, we can never really find safety. It has to come from within. Yeah. And so our relationship became one in which I helped this person bring safety back inside. What it meant, that's another whole long story. But it's also that relationship is that sense of safety external to us or internal to us? And how we're meeting that need and value for safety.
How does it show up? How do you know it's there? What's your evidence criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I love that, and I think that must have been so powerful for your client. What a life changer! No, but seriously, that's, as you said, it's one of our basic needs to feel safe, to have that security. So to understand that must have been huge. But what I would love to explore a little bit is, what are some of the telltale signs? We kind of mentioned a few, that when your values are misaligned, and what should we do?
Silence.
So, as I was mentioning, I'll jump in if that's all right with you, Wendy. I think whenever we feel disconnect within us, whenever there is this lack of motivation, when there is sabotage, demotivation, finding it hard to get up in the morning every day, finding life like work's a chore, we know there's a values issue happening there. There are higher values that are being compromised for the sake of whatever it is. And it was, and also in that space, Wendy mentioned it earlier, this concept of the means value and the outcome value, the goal value. As coaches, we kind of want to see, because sometimes, like, for example, this particular client that I mentioned to you earlier, this person did eventually end up leaving his job and getting something else. But at that time, he couldn't leave his job. For whatever reason, at that point, he had responsibilities where he couldn't leave the job. And so what we did was to recognize the means values that was keeping him in the job and how it enables the outcome value. So you mentioned it earlier as well, that all of these values, when they're fulfilled, it gives you freedom. Sometimes when we have situations within, when we're sort of, work and life, and it's lucky is the person who doesn't work a day in his life or a day in their life. And it's something that I came to very late in my life. And I remember hearing it as a child, this very successful person saying, I've never worked a day in my life, and I could never understand what they meant. And when I got into this industry, this space that I am now, I no longer work a day in my life. But very few is a person who's lucky to not work a day in their life. Most people, it's easy to say, well, follow your passion. It's not always possible to do. And so the alignment, to help people bring in alignment, is, okay, well, what are the values that motivate you towards your job, that your job fulfills? And even if this might not be at this point and you don't feel you can change it, but at this point, if this is the job that you need to do and it services certain key needs, which are, again, values, how can you, the recognition of what it gives you? So say, for example, again, another client I'm thinking about was a banker. And he goes, well, I don't love what I do. I do it because it enables me to travel, because adventure is a key value. Yeah. And so for him, he was able to, so that was enough for him in terms of, I don't hate what I do, but I don't love it. But my real passion is traveling, and my real passion is adventure. And so doing what I do enables me to fulfill that. And so this means is acceptable to me. And so, so I've forgotten the original question you asked, but recognizing not just what you're doing. We don't always have to be passionate. It's wonderful when we are, but we don't always have to be passionate about what we do. But what is the outcome that we get from it? And are we passionate about that, or is that being drained?
But also for the organization, for that person where they're working, You don't just want somebody to show up to get that paycheck so they can go off and do their travels. You still want them to be engaged and all that. So there's deeper levels to that, because if that person is literally just showing up, it's not fair on everybody else, and it's a disservice for those that he or she works for.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, wherever our passion and our motivation is driven from, people will be engaged. So this particular person was very demotivated at the time when we started working, but this recognition that, oh, actually all of this that I'm doing is enabling that, develop the motivation even at work. This is what it enables. Now, there are three key things that people, to put it into an umbrella term, there are three key things that people are essentially motivated by. And that is, there's a lifestyle, family, and work. And what is the primary of these three? So say, for example, lifestyle is the primary for somebody. And then, what the values they have and how they are coming towards in terms of their work. And the family will support the lifestyle, or is the primary family. And then the values around the choices they make in lifestyle and in work is going to support that. And recognizing in people, what is that primary of these three, for example? Is it lifestyle? Is it work? Is it family? And then how do these others fit into support if you have a family, right? Now, in terms of another way to develop alignment, because as in the topic, is also we have personal values, professional values. There are also cultural values. And more important than what you do is to notice if the cultural values and your personal / professional values, there's no misalignment, not necessarily full alignment, but no misalignment. That is going to disengage people in the workplace. So an example of that is, say, for example, you have a young, dynamic, or a dynamic, whatever age, a dynamic person who's a disruptor, who wants to, who wants to shake things up, innovate, and they're in a conservative organization that is, this is how it's always done, and this is the rate we're going at. You're going to have a lot of disruption happening. You're going to have a very unhappy person who's going to sabotage, right? Or you have an innovative company that is, cutting edge and is risk-taking, and you have somebody who likes steady and who is more sort of past-focused, as we call it, wants that security and safety and the sense of knowing predictability. Exactly. They're going to go into overwhelm. And they're not going to be able to cope. And they're not going to be able to live up to it. And that's going to create its own tensions and stress. So also the alignment in terms of cultural values, or organizational values, and personal values, professional or otherwise, are important.
I always find it fascinating, and I think this is where I can really get curious with people when I meet them. Sometimes I have to turn it on, and it's an effort. It's like, okay, right, turn on some curiosity. It's true. I'm being honest.
It's true. Absolutely.
And it's having that curiosity. Where have they come from? So we know our values come from our upbringing. So our schools, our family, the religion, the culture, the era. Think about the difference in generations. We have different value sets almost. But that's what fascinates me about people. I know I was in Beirut with a friend of mine, and Beirut was not in a good place at that time, unfortunately. And I was just in shock, because I grew up in Exeter, which is a cute little city and lots of countryside and not too far from the sea. And I have never experienced war. So just talking to my friend, and I said, she said, Wendy, driving my kids to school, I'm scared a bomb might go off. And I can't imagine that, because I have no point of reference. So having that curiosity about people, where are they coming from, and how can that impact their values? I remember my grandmother, she always used to have toast and she used to put on the butter and then scrape it all off. But she grew up in war, and in war there were rations. There was a scarcity of butter. So she carried on those behaviours right into her old age because it was ingrained. And we weren't allowed to waste food. Wasting food, it's not good. So, you can see how people become who they are because of their backgrounds, but then you have their experiences on top, and then beliefs on top of that, and then decisions and choices they've made on top of that. And yeah. I'm thinking a friend of mine, each time I go home and see how Wendy, I could never live in Dubai. I said, yeah, you're right. She couldn't. Because what's important to her is all being very close-knit and being familiar. So the thought of relocating to a different continent, the other side of the world, is just too far. She wouldn't do it. And it's not important enough. Why would she? Yeah. She's got everything where she needs it. So it's just that. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And that's an important point, Wendy, that you're saying, because especially in Dubai, and in the modern world that we're looking at, that we live in, when you talk about DE&I, diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's values is a key part to play in all of that, because there are people nowadays. Companies are global. Doesn't matter what type of a company you are. Your clients may be global, or some supplier may be from somewhere else, or organizations are multicultural, or whatever it might be, and everyone has different values, and they have cultural representations of values that may sound the same at the surface, and understanding those, and understanding just the depth of and value of values is critical. In fact, even in terms of, I did this workshop with a company here in Pakistan, in fact, and the business owner was like, well, what I'm frustrated by is that people don't take ownership for, if you see in the factory, if you see, something lying on the floor, nobody's going to pick it up and put it in the bin, and that's unprofessional and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, have you defined it? Have you defined? And professionalism is one of our values. I said, well, have you defined what professionalism means? He goes, no, professionalism is professionalism. I said, all right, well, let's get people together and let's figure it out. And so that's what we did. So I said, okay, so what are the key values? And we, again, as Wendy was saying, we threw out on the whiteboard a whole bunch of values, and we listed the hierarchy, and we did all of that. I said, okay, so what does this mean? Say it was professionalism. And every single person had a different view. Yeah. And and that's just like, well, no wonder that nothing is, all the expectations are not being achieved, because it hasn't been defined. And when we live in the modern workplace, diversity and inclusion being key elements, values work is where it's all at.
Absolutely.
And honing down into values is where it's all at.
Yeah. It makes me think of, we want our leaders to do the right thing, but doing the right thing just goes straight to their values, and those values could be different. Yeah. So I find with coaching clients as well, talking to them, in your model of the world, you're 100% right in everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. And they are, and they all agree with me. And it's like, well, yes, and the biggest challenge is everybody else is also right in what, everything that they think, say, and do. So we'll just have different values, different motivators, different beliefs, we're just different. It's what makes us unique and individuals. So respect is a key one. And my definition, it's all encompassing of everything we've spoken about. It's respecting that difference. So different values, different meanings, different words, different language, different motivators, and just respect and accept that they're different, and that's fine. How we then communicate, that's what we then work on. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, so being respectful is about asking more questions than actually listening to the answers. listening for them to be heard and not for you to respond. Definitely. Okay, so I wanted to throw this out to you guys because I read this and I've been told off I shouldn't keep on saying you guys, which is now making me really conscious because I'm saying it a lot. And I shouldn't say it to ladies. But okay, that's me. So forgive me if you're offended. In the book, there was this quote, and it says, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have no priorities. So again, I'm curious what came up for you, because for me, it was just like, oh, this is really interesting.
Yeah, for me, I just link it to my to-do list. You know, it's like, look, I can only cope with 3. So what's most important? And yeah, that's how I go through my day. And it's like, okay, what's most important now? And then that's what I will focus on. So is that linked to values? Yeah, it's putting value and identifying what's most important for me to accomplish next. Otherwise, I can easily get sucked in and doing more of the things that I enjoy playing with rather than doing constructive things that are really important. So yes, yeah, sometimes the really important things on my to-do list might not be, I mean, yes, they are aligned with my values, but they're not the same. And I think that's an important one to consider.
Yeah, for me, it's sort of, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have no priorities. It sort of connects into this concept of, you know, if you want to be a specialist, or you want to be, even remove the word specialist, you want to be efficient. Or let me stay with specialist. If you want to be a specialist, your specialization needs to be an inch wide and a mile deep. And a lot of people will be focused in terms of a mile wide and an inch deep. So we become a jack of all trades, or you end up doing a whole lot of stuff, but we're not really great at anything, right? And then, as I say, in I think in martial arts, don't be scared of the person who has 100 kicks, who's practiced them once. Be scared of the person who has a 1 kick who's practiced it 100 times, because that person's going to be great. Now, and the same thing, I think the same thing goes with priorities. I mean, and I say this often to especially top leadership, because as the higher up the leadership ladder you go, the more the responsibilities and the pressures and the to-dos and the priorities just increase. And if we're trying to just focus on all our priorities, we're not going to get anything done. It leads to inefficiency and leads to massive breaks in the system. So for efficiency, you need to be focused on a few things. And I often tell my clients, many of who do not cook, is think about your priorities as lots of pots on a stove. And often a burner will have a big stove will have often like 5 burners. So you must have maximum 3 that are on boil that you're focusing on, and the other 2 at the back can be, you know, on a simmer or about to get to, or once you've brought yours to full boil or whatever you need to do, then you put it on the simmer and you bring one forward. But if you have, we have a capacity and a limit and a boundary of how much we can actually attend to at a given time. And the key element of inefficiency and overwhelm is when we think about everything that we need to do and we think about it simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then we go into overwhelm because we just think everything needs to be done now. And we can never focus on anything, because at the same time as we might be writing an article or a report or something, we're also thinking about, oh my God, I had to go and do that for my kid, or I had to go and pick up the laundry, or whoever's coming. It's like separate. And when we kind of focus on just the very, like, few at a time, we bring in high levels of efficiency into systems. And that's where productivity comes in. That's where, you know, success comes in. That's where financial success comes in. Profitability comes in. Yeah. So and
I think one of the
more than 3 priorities, no priorities is good.
Exactly, and make one of your priorities delegating. If you have a lot of responsibilities, then make that a priority. One of the things I'm going to be doing today is looking at that list and delegating who can do that. This is what I'm going to focus on. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The art of delegation. One could do a whole workshop on the art of delegation.
Yeah. Well, it's not just for your work. It's not just professionally. It's in, if you've got children as well. And I think that's really important, is to bring, the chores, delegate who's doing what at what time, who's the responsibility, the consequences if you don't, and stop picking up after your kids all the time. If they don't put their clothes in the wash basket and they have to go to school the next day with dirty clothes, so be it. It's not the end of the world.
And it helps build the value of responsibility and independence, which then builds the value of self-belief and confidence.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I would love to know what when was a time that you felt that all across the board, personally, professionally, all your values were aligned? What did that look like? What did that feel like?
Okay, for me, it's when I teach embraining. Oh, it's magic and sparkles. This is my painting by one of my students, who she calls it magic and sparkles. When I'm teaching embraining, I just love every single minute of it. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning like a kid at Christmas thinking, is it time yet? So it's those days that I don't know where my energy comes from. I don't know how much time I've been talking, or, it's nothing is a chore on those days. I mean, I get home, I'm absolutely exhausted, but I'm excited for the next day. The days when I'm passionate about the topic and I'm excited to help people. So those, get those two together, and that's when, it's awesome.
Happy Wendy.
Happy Wendy.
What about you, Aliyah?
I absolutely agree with Wendy. I think in terms of I haven't always, and I teach this a lot share this a lot in my trainings, is I haven't always lived the life I live today. Yeah. And as I've been on this journey, I have actually become more aware of my values and more aligned with my values. So how I'm living is far more aligned with my values. And so far more in flow with myself. And I think, and just like what Wendy said, that passion, that excitement, and you can be physically tired, but you're not mentally tired. And so my capacity to achieve what I desire, that gives me meaning for my life, has just like a different time in my life. And what it's also done is it's expanded into how it's impacted my relationships and all other areas of my life. Because as one gets sort of aligned with one's values, connects into them, starts living them, you also learn how to create boundaries.
Yes.
And those boundaries then safeguard yourself and they safeguard others. I read this beautiful quote on social media somewhere, that boundaries are being able to love and respect somebody else and yourself simultaneously.
Yes.
And so the quality and health of all the relationships around me has transformed as I've kind of started living this life that fulfills me in every way. And before, I used to live a life where it was literally looking at the next holiday as my time when I would wake up and be alive again. And I'd sort of suffer through this life until I was on holiday again, or real life until I was on holiday again. And now I live a life where I don't need to escape from or desire to escape from it. And yes, it's nice to go on holiday, but my life is, again, going back to that quote, I don't work a day in my life. And the reason is because everything I do is now aligning very closely with my values. So I think, that journey and that exploration is of very high value, if I may use that word.
Wow, you two, just honestly listening to you both has given me goose pimples. You described this beautifully. I was trying to think of when I last felt that. And I would say it was when I was working at school, I loved my students. I was in learning support in secondary, absolutely adored them. I felt I was of service. But my children were at the same school. So what came up for me is I remember walking down the corridor, and I've got they're 6'3" twin boys. They weren't 6'3" back then, but they were, they were about 15, walking down the corridor, and I'd see them walking. I wouldn't embarrass them or anything. And as we walked past each other, our fingers would touch, and we'd turn around and look at each other, and there'd be that, and I'd walk into my classroom with my students. And so that for me, home life, love with the kids, love for my students. I was doing a purposeful job. That tick, 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 every single box. That was
and you feel you're alive. I think when you're doing something that ticks all the boxes, you feel alive.
And sometimes it can just be a conversation with people where you might align or have similar values in whatever you're talking about, and it's just, don't know where the time goes, but it's like, an hour's gone. I need to be doing. But you just get into that moment and have really deep conversations and learn about yourself in the process. I think that those special ones, it's like, wow, amazing.
Well, that actually happened to me on Sunday. A contact came through. We said, do you want to just jump on a quick Zoom call? They run a wellness company, and it's just expecting it for half an hour. 3 hours.
Wow.
I know. I did get to the point where, look, I really need to go to the bathroom. You either pause or we carry on and go, or what have you, but I need to go. It was everything. We were laughing, we were sharing, we were just complete stranger.
Wow.
And we both had our screens off. They were having technical problems, and I was looking a bit rough and ready, and it was a Sunday, and I was just, so we had 3 hours. I walked off that call absolutely buzzing. This person had the most beautiful soul, this energy, screamed professionalism and ethics. So all those key buzzwords, and Wendy will vouch for how excited I get. Just yes, an ethical person. So it was just amazing. So definitely, guys, if you're out there and you want to know if your values align with somebody, I think how the three of us have been talking of when it is aligned, that energy, that excitement.
Absolutely. Yeah, because our values are heart-based, and this is how we relate and connect with people. It's what's truly important, how we connect and how we feel. So your feelings will tell you when you're meeting your values and when you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, before we sign off, what I would love is if there's any tools or tips that you can share that people can maybe go off and do a little bit of research, dig a little bit deeper, so how we can support them. So if you've got any tricks of the trade.
I think it's of value. I'm going to keep using that word of going and exploring when one is in flow in life. Especially if somebody is not feeling the buzz, right, in the moment, then think about a time when you were excited, or when you were in flow, or when you were motivated, whatever that language is for you. And what was it about that situation that excited you, that was helping you create that buzz? That'll give you a great indication of what are your key values and how are you meeting them right now. Now, maybe, and again, because we're talking about business and personal values, maybe the work you're doing right now may not be fulfilling those values, but how else can you fulfill them at work? Or if you can't, what other ways can you fulfill them? And notice what sort of shifts that brings. That's a good way to sort of self-help. If you're feeling at all demotivated or kind of in a funk or any of that, that kind of language, that would be my main tip.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Wendy?
So much. If you're in a relationship, have the conversation. What's important to you about a relationship? What has to be there? What's most important? And then explore what that looks like, feels like, sounds like for the other person, and then explore how aligned you are. So depending on if the relationship is, it could be a friendship. What's important to you in friendship? And then have a discussion about it. Because from there, you can actually create some boundaries about how you will relate together and how you won't relate together. So I think that's a really useful one. So find somebody that you feel you know and trust and you feel super confident that with. Ask them what's important. I think that's one of the most key questions that we don't ask. What's most important to you right now? I mean, I ask this myself on a daily basis. Start with heart. Check in. What's most important to me right now? So what do I value right now? Okay, what are the options? What can I do about this? And then take some action. So, yeah, there's a process going on here.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach
and if I may add something to what Wendy said, because what she said I thought is really, really important. I think it's important to listen to your body. Your body will tell you. Like sometimes, we can be in a situation, maybe it's with somebody we love in an intimate relationship, it could be with good friends and old friends, or whatever it might be. And we feel disconnect within us. But we're like, well, she's my best friend, or he's my best friend, or he's my lover, or she's my wife, or whatever it is, right? And what's going on? It's always been great. And our bodies will tell us when we're not in alignment. And exactly what Wendy was talking about. It's leaning in and listening to your body, and then becoming curious about it and having a conversation with yourself first, and maybe with others, because that's how. Actually, I'm thinking about a personal situation where I was in that with very close friends, like old friends, really, really close, part of my sort of table of 5 or 6, totally disconnected and feeling terrible. And I had to really sit with myself and say, what's going on? And I realized there's a values disalignment taking place, just lifestyle or whatever it was. And the moment I acknowledged it, it released the pressure. And then we actually acknowledged to each other that we weren't aligned at the moment, and that was okay. And it enabled space then for the relationship to regrow. And that was really precious, because these people are very, very close to me, very important to me. So I really loved what Wendy said. It is, listen to your body. Listen to your body, it'll tell you.
Absolutely, because a lot of times, I mean, this is what happened when I got into that relationship after my marriage. That safety, he said all the buzzwords, everything, and I felt safe, but there was something inside that was going, there's something's off here. But hindsight's a beautiful thing. Okay. So before we go, I'm just going to share with you this book. So if you don't have it, I don't know if that's back to front on the screen, but
it's perfect.
It's Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And if you go to page 198, they've got a whole section there on living into our values and giving feedback. Brilliant. So if you're in leadership and you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend it. Grab it, and you will be taking a lot of tools and strategies home with you and to work. So definitely worth a read. Okay, ladies, on this note, we are going to close, and I would like to thank you both so very, very much for stepping up and sharing your stories and your experiences with us. So on that note, guys, thank you very much and have a very good evening. Good night.
Good night.